Badman, LB, Rupert, Albert, and the Bishop Paul Brown. Badman for the 2020-2021. And you know what it is. You know Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego too. This is Paul Rupert.
We're back!
Coming out with a brand new thought, covered under the blood in which we were born. So we know how to get to.
Is for bold, A is for active, D is for determined. When you consider King David valiant, you have an idea and understanding of overtaking this. Stay tuned.
Hallelujah, revive us again.
We are excited to bring fresh commentary, good conversation with two bad men. Boy, you don't want to miss this. Badmen4Christ. Join us.
Stands for determined, just like Peter when he did his first sermon. As the saying goes, bad men for Christ. That is how we'll be for the rest of our life. Sit back, relax, and enjoy our show because we're stuck in the house with nowhere to go.
Welcome everybody to another edition of the Badman Show. Overseer, welcome.
Bishop, it's good to see you, sir. It's good to see you. Another Monday, another 7:15, another Badman Show with two bad men for Christ. It's good to be here. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing very good, sir. I had a good week on last week. Thank God for his continual blessing. I just want to extend my greetings to our guests and each and everyone that's been so faithful joining us on these Monday evenings. And I want to just announce again, just let you know how much God loves you, loves me. I know, and I know God loves you.
Amen. Our new catchphrase, God loves you. We're using that new catchphrase, yes. And it's so good to be here another day. And so to everyone that's watching, welcome again to the Badman Show. We appreciate you. We love you. We're asking you that you watch us continually every Monday, 7:15 to 8:15. We're having great shows, great guests. We got another one coming on today. But please like, subscribe, share with your friends, your family, your enemies. Share with everyone. Let them know that 7:15, there's two bad men for Christ talking about different subjects, but always leaving it at a Christian level. And we are so proud of that we can come and we can share our opinions, our thoughts, and we bring in these great people that come and share their expertise at times. So we are so excited. So we are talking about fashion today.
Oh, and you finally have come in contact with the most fashionable fellow. Ladies and gentlemen, I just want to let you know that I am a specialist in black
and white
and other colors.
And white, black and white.
where if you notice, even on tonight, you see, I have my Badman shirt on, and it's black, and of course I got the colors, a little red here, you know. So our overseer, he wears all different colors. In fact, I'm not even sure what color he has on tonight. Is that pink?
I knew we had on tonight, so I said I'm going to leave the normal promotion of I'll just have the hat here, and I have our mug here, so I'll use that to promote. But I said I'm going to come with a little bit of color. This is salmon. This is not pink.
Wait a minute. Salmon, the fish.
Like
the
fish.
Is the guy that the fish?
Because I love to go fishing. I'm catching myself today.
Oh my goodness. Well, I believe we have a great guest that's gonna, really give us some insight on fashion, some psychology, and hopefully, if you are listening to tonight, please, by all means, get ready because you're going to receive some valuable information.
Great. So wow.
Hi, I'm Sarah. I'm founder of Trulery, which is a design psychology website where I offer design and fashion psychology consultation. It's also where I write a blog that bridges psychology and design.
So Overseer, the cue was for me to actually bring her in, but they haven't brought her in yet. Ah, there she is.
Hey.
Hi,
everyone.
Dr. Sarah C. Young McFarland. God bless you. We are delighted. We're glad to have you.
Thank you for having me.
Welcome to the Badman Show.
Thank you.
And Sarah, I am so glad to have you because finally I have all these men giving me thoughts about what I should have on my background.
Oh.
I am so glad at last I have somebody who can actually give me good advice.
Well, sisters, Sister McFarland, I want to save that for last.
Okay.
Because I don't want him to be heartbroken for the rest of the show.
We'll see.
So why don't I know we had a little clip that gave a little quick synopsis of who you are. Would you share a little bit more? Person, professional, ministry, just briefly, so that our guests have an idea about who you are.
Well, again, I'm Sarah. Some people call me Dr. Sarah. I am married to Scotty McFarland, and I have 3 other people in my house that call me mom. One is 16, one is 13, and one is 7, and they keep me very busy. So two boys and a girl. The youngest is a girl.
All right.
Wow.
So with that, I also I licensed psychologist. I graduated from Seton Hall University here in New Jersey with a PhD, because there's different doctorates, a PhD in counseling psychology. And so I would say that was in 2007. So that now is like a long time ago. So for the last 14 years or so, I have been specializing in the area of trauma and abuse. So child trauma and abuse. Also within the last couple of years, because I'm also a very creative person, I've been specializing in fashion and design psychology. So that's helping people create wardrobes and create spaces that support them emotionally, make them feel better.
Well, Dr. Sarah, that's great. But I'm glad you also specialize in trauma, because my co-host has created a lot of trauma.
Oh, no.
So would you now quickly talk to me about the colors here? I have black on. He has salmon on. What's the psychology behind all of that?
Well, I would say there is no good or bad color.
There is.
And
don't help him out. There's good and bad.
Color is seen within the context. So you look at color within all the other different colors around it. So black and white, those are good colors. Salmon, that's a good color. But you also have to consider the color that it's with, whether or not it looks right or not to the eye.
Oh.
So right now you have a white background on black and white. That looks fine to my eye.
Yes.
And he has salmon with it almost looks like a sage green, but I can't tell. And those colors actually look good together. Those colors are actually complementary.
Oh my goodness.
So,
oh my goodness. You're scoring some good points on the show already.
I did not pay her. So I just want you to know. All right. Okay. But Sarah, that's great. So tell us a little bit, because you're really doing, I guess it might be the same thing. Kind of tell us how you kind of got to trauma, and now you're talking about colors and creativity with that industry. So you dealt with child psychology in those areas. Now you went to this other area. How do you mesh them? One, I'm sure you probably do mesh them. But number 2 is, how do you get into the differences?
Well, it's all my interests. So I always wanted to be a psychologist from high school, because I was so interested in children. I was interested in adolescence. I was interested in how children manage the whole adolescent period and made it to adulthood. And plus, I had a difficult time during adolescence and high school. So I think I wanted to help other children, other young people. So I always had this desire to help. I didn't know exactly what it would look like, but I knew that I wanted to be a psychologist. and I knew that I wanted to help them in some capacity. But along with that, I also was always interested in fashion and design. And at the time, I didn't know that you can actually put the two interests together. So I went the path of psychology and trauma. And then as I was in my career and I was a little bit dissatisfied, I was feeling like there was something missing. I searched and I researched and I found that, design psychology and fashion psychology are a real thing. So then I kind of put the two together. And also, as a psychologist, you can study so many different behaviors. You can study all different groups of people. So, when I do some of my work with wardrobe consulting, I'm still helping young people. Like sometimes I help teenagers as they're trying to develop and they're trying to go through the normative developmental process. I try to help them create a look that matches that. So I see what their wardrobe looks like, how they're dressing, and I try to put the two together so that they can be their best self on the inside and on the outside.
Oh, great. All right.
Yeah.
Take that same thought line and move that into the church culture.
Okay.
If you would.
Okay.
Do you see a shift between this generation? I'm not sure if it's an X, Y, Z, or P. But whatever it is, is a shift to the other generation where you were jacket tie, hat,
Yes.
white gloves, to today's culture where it's shorts and jeans and t-shirts.
So I would say that, historically, traditionally, we've been very structured as a society, very boundaried. And that showed up in our clothing. So you had your work clothes, you had your church clothes, right? You had your going out clothes, and they were not the same because our society tended to be very, very structured. But as the years went on, that structure has eroded a little bit and gotten a lot more relaxed. And there's so many complexities in that. One of them is like the rise of urban wear. The other one is like just having more relaxed views. People are questioning tradition. So you see that in the clothing. So nowadays, there really isn't like a boundary between different types of clothes. Like even for my own kids, like church clothes and work and school clothes are the same. That's not how I was raised. And so some people have a problem with that because even people my generation and older, they're used to having a very structured way. So when you go to church, you dress up. But now it's changing, and it's not really right or wrong. It's just different culture, and you have to kind of take each case individually. Like why, if you're going to church and you're dressing up because you want to dress up, that's fine. But if there's any, you have to kind of think about what other reasons there are. If you're going to church and you want to dress down, that's fine. But what are the reasons? Because clothing is a communication. We don't often think about it that way, but clothing is nonverbal communication. So we need to be aware of some of the messages that we're conveying.
I agree. Yes.
Yeah.
So I know Bishop told you, or they should have told you, I'm the guy who goes off to the left and to the right when it comes to questions. So I have a question a little bit to the left though. So do you think though that it's so where some people may say, man, the generation, the generation X or generation Y, they're the millennials, they're rebelling because they're not dressing up. Are they saying we want a different way of doing worship or doing church by not dressing up? Or do you think it's just that they're just more comfortable that way? What do you think is their psychology in it all?
The people that are deciding not to dress up?
Yes.
I think it's part of the culture. The culture has just been very much more relaxed than it is. And so, a long time ago, people didn't go to church because they felt like they didn't have the right clothes. So then there was this whole idea that, you should just come as you are. And that kind of crept into the culture. And then as society just became a lot more relaxed, that became more of the thing to do. And so I don't think it's a matter of rebelling. I just think that it's just a different way. Some people might think of it as rebelling. If they're very much stuck to their way, they might think of it as that. But I think you have to take each church culture for what it is, because you go to some churches and everybody dresses down. That's the way that they're built. but then you go to some and they're not. So you kind of have to just look at what culture we're looking at, you know. And you know, if a person wants to dress down and they see a church that's traditional and doesn't do that, they just might go to another church. That, you know, that might be enough to turn them away.
Right.
You know.
So yeah, I mean, that's interesting because at one time men were required, quote unquote, a written rule to wear jacket and tie.
Yeah.
Yes. And in fact, there was a whole culture sets around it because Easter was the time you actually get your new suit for the year.
Yeah.
And that was that was like your spring cleaning, bring in the new, get rid of the old. And so that has actually changed now because there is not much emphasis on what you're wearing. So now, what messages should the older generation take from seeing the younger one coming with jeans with there's two ripped knees, the jeans is torn, and you can see the threading. If dressing is unspoken language, what is it that they're trying to say?
The people that are dressed that way, I think they're just part of their culture. You know, that's a whole I'm relaxed. It's a very much I'm gonna be me type of mentality. And it's also, they're also getting support from the wider culture. So it's not like just them alone saying that. They're getting support to do that.
Okay.
And some, you know, some older people, some people who are more traditional are put off by that. That's the way it is. But then you have to think, how far do you let that go? Are you so focused on how they're dressing that you're not thinking about their heart and the inside? Or are you going to just kind of stick to your guns and say, that's not the way we do it? And then not be inviting. And if that's how you're going to be, then you know that you're just going to lose some people.
Yeah, I think there's always that struggle, right, with that mentality of dress between, are you rebellious, or are you just doing it because, like you said, want to be comfortable? And sometimes, most times, it's I want to be comfortable. I'm not doing this to rebel. It's just how I want to dress. And I don't think it takes all of that dressing to still touch God, right? Because we don't dress that way at home when we're in our bedrooms. We don't get our suit and tie on and say, okay, now I'm gonna pray to God. You know, we just dress the way we dress. So I think it's that mentality. So how do you look at, so let's look at then corporate America, because in corporate America, sometimes you have certain ways you have to dress. I mean, I've come out of that where you have to dress a certain way and versus the church. So how do you think you compare the corporate America versus the church right now when it comes to that attitude?
I think it's sort of the same underlying message. You know, clothing is a form of communication. When you're in corporate America, they want employees to wear things like suits. Sometimes they want them to wear uniforms because you're representing the organization. So when people see you, they see the organization. So they want you to represent them in a certain way. So, for example, if you go to a restaurant and you see somebody dressed in the uniform, you expect them to be accommodating because that's how the organization wants you to see that organization as accommodating. Now, of course, that may or may not be true, but that's what they expect with the clothing. Same thing with church. Church, there's a message there. And when you see certain styles of dress, you kind of know what to expect. Right. So like if you see a habit, you know what that's about. A nun with a habit. If you see a yarmulke, you know what that's about. If you see somebody, and not everybody picks this up, but if you see a woman that never wears pants and never wears jewelry or makeup, you know where that's coming from. So, you know, there's always messages that are being communicated, and we make inferences based upon that.
Great. Hey, overseer, we got a question from our dear friend, brother Deacon Rollins, and I literally can answer the question. I'm going to take a shot, overseer. What do you think?
We'll take guesses. We'll both take guesses. We'll see who's right on the answer to this question.
Yes.
So he's asking a question. Hello, Dr. Sarah. You know Simon, so you know how he is.
Hi, Simon.
How many church hats do you have in your closet? So before you answer,
okay,
Bishop, how many do you think?
Me?
Yes.
0.
Okay.
Zero.
I don't think that. I think she has at least 4. I'm going with 4.
I'm going with 0.
Okay. Sarah, what's the answer?
I have one.
Ah!
I have one hat that I like, that I wear. No, I don't really wear it, but I have it.
You have one.
What?
You don't
Well,
have.
when I was younger, I had to wear them all the time. And I said, when I got older, I'm not going to be doing that.
You see, that's the reason why. That is the reason why. Overseer, that was the reason why I said 0, because I know Lady Seyoung, Pastor C.
I know. Yeah. But I'm saying, I thought you would have had some, because my thought was you just kept some for keepsake. You didn't wear
No,
them
that was so
back in
long
the
ago.
closet.
No.
Oh.
I'm not opposed to it. I might buy one day, but I haven't seen any that I like.
You don't have any in the attic? Basement?
No, I have to visit my mom's closet for that one.
Oh, Lord. Oh, my God.
Okay. Hey, Overseer, we got Holland. We got Holland. Oh, my goodness.
We got Holly Bro. There's another one who watches the show, and she's actually been on our show, too. She said it is more comfortable to dress down. However, the way we worship she's giving a comment, the way we worship hasn't changed. And she's saying, based on that. And although we dress down, we should still dress modestly and respectfully, as not to offend God or anyone in church. So this is my question. So I'm gonna use that, because this is my question, because you said something that I thought was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
So I work in an office, and they require me to wear a suit and tie. And because I get a paycheck, I wear that suit and tie. But when I go to church, I get upset when the pastor says I need to wear a suit and tie because I'm not getting a paycheck. Now, isn't that kind of saying to the church, well, I know you have rules. And I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying, I'm just being a devil's advocate. I know you have rules like my work does, but because this is work, I don't have to follow your rules because you're not paying me. Or do you see what I'm saying? Is there a kind of a double standard for that person, for those people who don't want to adhere to maybe the rules of the church and say, I'd rather go someplace else? Because they won't leave their job because the job says to wear a suit and tie.
Well, I look at the work environment and the church environment is very different. Like you said, the work environment, you are getting paid, so you have to do certain things. But the church environment, you should feel free. Your heart is supposed to be changed, it's not supposed to be rule driven. So if he's saying that he wants you to wear a shirt and tie, I would wonder why. Why do you need me to do that? And if I don't do that, does that mean that I can't worship? Does that mean that I can't lead in church? Because then that seems a little strange.
Okay.
I would just want to know why.
I have no issue. I'm for you come as you are. As long as you're willing to worship. I get more mad if you don't worship them by what you're wearing. So
and some people are, you're dealing with all different personalities. Some people, somebody says to wear a shirt and tie, they don't have any problem with it. They're very flexible, no questions. But some people are more rigid. So you as a leader in the church, you have to know how to deal with all different types of people, and be willing to, answer questions when people have questions.
That's the thing. That's a great point. That's what I really wanted to say. When it comes to fashion and wear, I think that we have to understand we're dealing with different people with different mentalities, different cultures, different value bases, different morals, different whole bunch of things. And when you worry so much about what they're wearing rather than all the other things they're dealing with, you kind of lose what we're really trying to achieve in that person or from that person. Because I truly believe that if somebody is there long enough, they'll shift. And like Holly said, if they weren't dressing very modestly, if they love what they see because of love and not because they were told, but because they were given love, they were given help, they were given support, they'll also shift even their attire because of that. So I'm an avid believer in that. So I agree with you.
Oh, that's great. So I'm going to shift the conversation. But before I shift the conversation, I just want to give a shout out to our producers. We have, as you can see, our producers. We have Boynton. Shout out to Ken. who was instrumental in getting Dr. McFarland on tonight. We have Albert and Sean Gore. All right. We also want to say also that if you would like to reach out and get information on Dr. McFarland, you can reach her here. Our email address is Sarah at truelarry.com. There's her website and Instagram and her Twitter. So please, if you love what she's saying and you'd like for her to explain some of the dynamics behind clothing, please reach out to her. Where I'm shifting this conversation now is I want to talk about operating in a well-designed area. Is there a difference? Does your productivity improve if you are in a well-designed area as opposed to just any old put together area?
Yes. So research does show that when you are in an environment that lifts your mood, that you can be more productive. But what's well designed may vary. Okay, so a lot of times, just the same thing with clothing. We're dictated to about what is the proper way to design your home. We see all kinds of trends in the magazines. That's fine, but that may not necessarily lead to a meaningful space. You have to consider certain needs when you're talking about designing a space or having a well-designed space. So one, you want to have your safety needs, your physical needs met. You want to feel safe. You want to have locks on the doors, right? That's one need. That's the very basic need. Then you have other needs, like you have your psychological and social, spiritual needs. So that's like the need for belonging, the need for love. Then you have your social needs. That's how whether or not you're introverted or extroverted, how well you connect. Sometimes you might need open spaces if you're more extroverted. Sometimes you might need more segmented spaces if you're more introverted. Then, of course, you have your aesthetic needs. You want something pretty to look at. And so those are some of the things you want to consider when you're talking about a well-designed space. And there's a whole bunch of science, too, that you can consider, like the science of color. You have warm colors, which are orange and red, cool colors, blue and greens. And studies show that when you have cool colors, you, in fact, do feel cooler. And when you have warm colors, you do feel warmer. And there's other things, too, like they say that if you have like a warm colored background, you might seem friendlier. If you have a cool color background, you actually might seem more powerful for people in an office. And of course, that doesn't mean that you're automatically going to be friendlier or more powerful. You have to consider personality and stuff, but it's just saying that it might be more likely.
So let me ask before Overseer jumped in on this real quick. Yeah. Let me ask. So how would you go about creating a well-designed space for me to have my productivity just hit the roof?
Okay. So what I would do is I would sit down with you and I would do some assessments. So we call that like an environmental autobiography. So I would look at your history. What's your history of spaces like? What in your past has been some of your most favorite spaces? I mean, some people have trauma around spaces. Some people have had traumatic experiences. But when we sit down and go over your history, I'll be looking for high positive associations.
So I can give you answer to all of that. Okay. Everything is off the charts.
So we would have to narrow it down a little bit. And so I would ask, so if you told me that there are certain things that you enjoyed that gave you positive memories about your past, whether it be something of your grandmother's, a certain color or something, I would look to see if you had that in your space.
Oh.
And it's not about recreating the past, but recreating the feeling, the positive vibes that you got from the past. So are you able to recreate that? How can you recreate that in your current space?
Okay.
That's what I'd be looking for.
So do you also look at mess? Because like my office is a mess. So, but I don't see a mess. I see just a lot of stuff, and I know where stuff is. If somebody walks in, they see a mess. And I've heard that more clutter kind of reduces productivity. while no clutter doesn't help, but you should have something. But a lot of clutter does, reduce productivity. Is that true?
Yes. So studies show that when you have too much clutter, it does impede productivity. But I would question like where this clutter thing is coming from. Like you're saying, you're not describing it as clutter. You're describing it as something else. So I would want to know where that's coming from, and I would want to know how you can kind of blend the two, because sometimes you can create a space that has warmth but not be so cluttered that you can't work as efficiently. So are you working efficiently? Can you work more efficiently and at the same time keep some of that comfort that you're feeling that you say you like in other ways?
I don't think it's comfort. Okay, but I can't as a question here.
Okay.
I wish I could say it was more efficiently, but I'm a little bit tired. I run ragged, so I don't think it's as efficient as it should.
Okay, so yeah. So then you would have to work to see how you can reduce some of that, because it doesn't sound like you're saying it's negative. It sounds like you're saying other people are saying it's negative.
Yeah, to me, it's not negative.
And he's confused. So we got a question.
Let me go to the question. We'll get back to the time. This question. So, Dr. Sarah, how short or tight should the dresses or men's shirts be? Is showing too much a fashion choice?
Oh, I would never say something is too short, or in my work, something is too short or not to anybody. What I would do is I would try to figure out how they're feeling about it, what people are saying about it, and where the conflict is coming from. So I wouldn't be, even if I thought it was too short or something, I wouldn't necessarily come out and say that right off the bat. I would kind of see where they are with it. Like, for example, if somebody had an issue and was wearing like skimpy clothing, revealing clothing, and they got a lot of negative feedback on it, but they didn't understand why, because they didn't see it. I would try to figure out where that discrepancy comes from and why they're not seeing it, and maybe help them to discover how they can dress in a way that really is consistent with how they feel, because perhaps they don't see it because they associate this skimpy clothes with something. Maybe they associate it with value. Maybe they associate it with looking good. So in their mind, they want to look good. That's not a bad thing. But let's see, how can we look good in a way that doesn't draw negative attention and still makes you feel confident? So that's kind of how I would approach that.
So let's move this towards the church sanctuary. How does this translate into a church sanctuary? Does it really matter? How many flowers I have around the pulpit? How many green plants are within the sanctuary? How many pictures of myself or no pictures of myself that's on the wall in the sanctuary? What are your thoughts?
Okay, so we have what's called a schema for things. The schemas are scripts that we have in our head for the way things are supposed to go. So like there's a schema for the library. So we know how to act in the library. We go in there, we're quiet, we take books out. When we go to a restaurant, we know what to do. We have a script. We sit down, we wait for the waiter. There's a script for church, right? So like most people, they understand that there's a pulpit, there's a congregation, but everybody's script might be slightly different. So as a leader, you need to be aware that people may have different scripts. They might have a negative script for church. They come in, people aren't nice to them, so you want to enhance your space in a way that it creates a positive script for people. So as far as specific designs, like having flowers, flowers are actually known to be positive. You want elements of nature. Pictures of yourself, I would question what that's about. Because you don't want the focus to be on you, because it's not about you in church, it's about God. So I'd question that. Because in a home you have pictures of family, you have pictures of yourself, because they're positive for you. So when you're in church, it's not for you, it's for everyone that's coming in.
So what you're saying, Sarah, is that I should not have my 30-foot long poster picture of me standing there with my arms crossed in my robe with the sign underneath. This is the Church of Jesus Christ. That should happen. That's what you're saying. That should happen. Okay, I get it. I think
everything sends a message. What do you think that message sends?
I thought it meant, hey, look at me. I'm a man of God.
That's where the problem could lie. Hey, look at me. Yes.
Yeah. I was like, hey, look at me. I'm a man of God. I was wearing my robe, but I guess I got to take that down. I'm sure I don't have that. But
maybe that's good for your personal office to remind you for you. Maybe that might not benefit the other people.
Hey, but let's add this though, because a lot of times though, like for instance, I have a picture. I don't have a 30-foot poster of me. I don't have that, but I do have a picture of the founder in the back of the sanctuary. Big, a one that we gave them for their. We gave I think we gave it for their anniversary, but we put it back there because when my mom and dad, take the picture down. Start thinking how so when we put it up there so that we remember them, because I'm a big legacy guy,
right?
So we have that picture in there,
right.
So I can understand that, but I'm not big on putting my picture on a bunch of stuff. I literally have to be convinced to do some stuff, and I'm just not that guy, because I agree with you. Our presentation should be Jesus, not individuals that are leading the church. Even though we're leading the church, we are not the leader of the church. We are a subset of the leader. So I agree with you on that. So Simon Rollins says, to Dr. Sarah, how do I handle being called demon? Rollins instead of Deacon Rollins earlier. I feel traumatized by Bishop Brown.
Maybe Bishop can give you some counseling.
Deacon Simon, I really didn't intended to call you demon. You probably heard wrong. Maybe my accent got in the way a little bit. but just before we take go ahead and take Michelle Robinson's question, because I want to ask you something in another area.
It's not really quiet. This is more of a comment from Michelle. She said, I don't think I want to sit in a chair and picture, and I guess she's saying, and the picture is constantly in front of her. So her seeing a picture of the leader constantly in front of her. But there is a very huge church in Atlanta. I won't say the name of the church. That's what it was. And there was 30,000 people at that church, and no one had a problem.
We don't know if anyone had a problem.
Well, this way, the majority didn't have a problem with it because they were still coming, right? So there were still 30,000 people there. So it's strange sometimes, but I think again that depends on who you're trying to reach, like you were saying, right? The makeup of the church depends on who you're trying to reach. Traditional churches, the pastor's chair, the minister's chair, that may not reach some people. They don't want that. And there's some people who just want a stage, like we see now, stage with the music and the nice plant there in the background. That pulls some people. So I think it depends on who you're trying to reach.
Right. So back in the day, that was normal to see that. So no one, well, if you were raised in that, then you wouldn't question that. Until you saw something different, perhaps.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so we are going to ask this question now. I think it's time that we get into this very deep question.
No, you want me to? You're gonna ask her take care of this one first, because I want to shift into child trauma.
Okay. So we'll talk about this one first. I was going to get into my deep question because I want to make sure we don't lose out on my background. So can this be cultural also? So I guess the question Michelle's asking is also, can the way we do things for our the visual things we do visually, can it be a cultural subset also, not just an age kind of thing?
Much of it is cultural, and it's sort of interwoven with age, because culture kind of changes with generation. Because if you go to another church, you'll see a completely different style of worship. You go to another church, you see some churches you can't make a noise Other churches, you better make a noise. So it's very different. It's culture has a lot to do with it. Yes.
All right, great. So the question I want to ask is, can you share anything coming out of the pandemic? As the pandemic in any way increase child trauma in any capacity? That anything that you can actually share with us, give us some insight, because we do not only as church, we have Sunday school for some churches, for at home. So children are right across the board. What can you share with us in that area?
So I would say in my line of work where I specifically focus on abuse, child abuse, yes, because when the pandemic happened, there were less eyes on these children. So they weren't in school, so they didn't have teachers and principals reporting the abuse. So a lot of it went unseen. And there were the caseworkers, the child protection services weren't as available as they were before. So there was a lot of suffering that did go on, unfortunately, during the pandemic.
How do you address or deal with these type of situations?
Well, specifically for me, I do psychological evaluation. So my job is to really put pieces of puzzles together. So I spend putting pieces of puzzles together all day. So child comes in, they report abuse of their parents or somebody. You always have different undertones in each case. Like, some of the caseworkers or the CPS, I should say, you always kind of know what they believe by the way that they write things. So like sometimes, the kids are believed, you have to go by what they say. Sometimes the kids question the parent. So, sometimes they feel like the parent is coaching the child. So there's all different kinds of cases. And so my job is not to believe or to believe, not to believe or to believe. My job is to go by what's being said to me. And to consider it within the context of what's happening. So I look at their history. I look at the parents' history. I look at how the children are doing in school, because that's information. I look at the relationships. What was the relationship like before? So I'm just really doing a lot of investigation and a lot of digging to say why this child is presenting this way. And then sometimes I even have parents, like I said before, sometimes you can tell how the CPS feels about the family. I had one case, which is one of many cases like this, where they felt like the parent was coaching the child into saying that abuse happened by the other parents.
Wow.
And so when I met with the parents, I have to assess everything. So I assess their personality functioning. And when I met with the parent, I didn't see that. I didn't see coaching, but I did see that she was very histrionic in her presentation. And that came from wanting to feel validated, feeling like she had to do so much to achieve. And she took that into her parenting. So she became very overbearing. And so the other parent kind of uses that against her. So it looks like she might be coaching. It looks like she might be trying to tell the daughter to do certain things. But in fact, that's actually her personality, is to kind of try to get everything done because she feels like she's the one to do it. So I can't say whether abuse happens or not, but I say that the division might feel, or I should say CPS, Child Protection Services, might feel that she's presenting this way. She seems like she's coaching because of her personality function, which doesn't mean that she's coaching. So I just look at all the pieces to see why someone is presenting that way.
I'm sorry. One quick question there.
Yes.
What do you recommend for non-professional like us? How do we recognize something like that? And what you think that we should do?
I think that it's a good idea to start making referrals to people who specialize in that. If you notice that there's something wrong and you don't know what it is, it's not your job to necessarily know what it is. You just make referrals to treating professionals to get evaluated, to see a therapist or a counselor, or to CPS if you feel like you really need to do that. Because it's good for churches to do that, because it shows that they not only support the spiritual, but they support the emotional. And you have to have both emotional health and spiritual health. You can't use one to substitute the other, because if you are using your emotional health or emotional life to substitute for your spiritual life, that's not going to work, because you can only be, you can only make yourself happy so much. But you also can't use your spiritual life to substitute your emotional life, because if your emotional life is not well, you're not going to receive what's being said to you. You're not going to hear from God, really, because you're not even in your right state of mind. So they both have to support one another.
Right.
So Sarah, so you were talking about abuse. I'm going to shift a little bit just to regular trauma, because I think kind of Bishop was talking about this also. Was in this time, we notice how it's affected adults, how this COVID has affected adults, whether it be through work, having to work at home, or not being able to get out as often as possible. And so we know that it's probably affecting kids too, because of school, not being able to go to school, now going to school with all the masks and all the panicking and all those things. And of course, we parents don't make it easier, because we're like, hey, wear your mask, or hey, you got, we get real nervous, don't cough if you're in class, because they're going to send you to the nurse and you have to come home, all that kind of stuff. How have you seen an increase in child trauma, just basically not based on abuse, but just regular psychological trauma because of it? And then what do you kind of do to help them through that? What maybe are one or two steps you kind of give them to say, this is what you want to do to kind of help you through it?
Yeah. So, the pandemic was tough on everybody. And it's kind of like, this is something that we, at least in the United States in this generation, hasn't really seen. It's almost like, other countries, they have wars and they have to deal with. We had the pandemics that we have to deal with. And so we would deal with it in any way we would deal with a catastrophe, right? The best way that we can. So, what did we have to do? We had to stay home, right? We had to go to school at home. Nobody really wanted to do that, or many people didn't want to do that, but we had to make the best of it. So, kids need certain things, right? So they couldn't go out, but they need socialization, they need nurturance, they need structure. So it's on parents, caretakers, to be able to still provide that as much as they possibly can. It may not be perfect, but as much as they can. And where they mess up or where they fall short, have communication about it. Let children know that, what, this is how you handle problems. We're not going to be perfect, but we talk about it, we communicate, and we have understanding. And those are the things that you have control over.
So we got two questions. Can you please? No, there's one before Deacon. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
And this is not a question. This is a comment from Holly. As a special educator, I contact the school administrators and clinical coordinators when students allude to similar situations. I think she's talking about abuse. If she hears something that sounds like it could be abuse, she can contact school administrators. And for us as pastors or leaders, you have to we have a Sunday school. It's not as prevalent as it was before, but we had, taught teachers that if they heard something, they need to let me know so we can reach out to people. And that's a really tough one, because for us as pastors, you have parents who sometimes are members of your church, and for you to call the authorities on them and say there's abuse possibly,
that's hard.
It's a tough one, because then that you're supposed to be also helping them through things, and it's almost like you're causing an issue. So it's very hard and very deal with, but you do have to worry about that child because they're more vulnerable. James Howell's asking this question. James Howell, you didn't ask a question because you sold me out, man, with telling me to get rid of my picture. But Dr. Sarah, are you seeing children that will have long-term effects? So this is kind of going to the question. Do you see children that will have long-term effects because of the pandemic, so maybe into their adulthood? So this is heavy clinical depression, I guess he's talking about, right, and the such.
Well, I think that could happen if they don't have the right supports in place. So there's usually other factors that contribute to that. So if somebody's going to have a long-term effect, you might see some issues earlier on in their ability to cope. You might see lack of family support, and the pandemic may just have exacerbated that. So if there's a long-term effect, it wouldn't be necessarily just because of the pandemic, but also a lot of the factors contributing to that. Because you can have somebody who does fine in the pandemic, and you can have somebody who doesn't do fine. And so it's not just the pandemic. It's a lot of factors that contribute, and the pandemic exacerbates that.
This brings a question to me, and this is great, Dr. Sarah. Thank you so much. But it brings a question to me before we talk about our merchandise. Because you talk about fashion and you talk about trauma, and there's sometimes a correlation if your child kind of changes their fashion. Is that correct?
Yes,
Like,
there can
change
be.
what they normally wear, not just from a preteen to a teen, but from a teenager who might have wore a lot of bright colors or whatever. All of a sudden, they're not wearing bright colors. They're not wearing the same type of shoes. This is what parents like. Could you explain like what kind of little things parents should look for that could trigger a child just going into a stage that we might want to deal with?
Well, we sometimes can show our emotional distress through our clothing. So like you might have some people who have body image issues, and so they only wear oversized clothing. So if you notice something like that, that's a sign that maybe you need to be dealing with something deeper there. Like it's not just external. Like I said before, you want your external, internal to match. Some people, they shop so much for clothes. I know that teens may not be able to do that as much, but they shop to feel better. And teens might have more access now than we did when we were younger. They could just go online, and click a button. So there are some emotional issues that can be reflected in clothing. And so when you see that, that person may need to do some deeper work with a counselor, or that person can see what you would call a wardrobe consultant. So the wardrobe consultant works from the outside in, the therapist works from the inside out. So a wardrobe consultant will address those issues as it's reflected in the clothes. So if there's somebody with body image issues, you might do what we do like cognitive behavioral. We call it cognitive behavioral techniques, like maybe have them wear clothes that are suitable and have them see that they can still be okay, that they're still okay, they're still valuable with clothes that fit them. So that's just a little example. But if those issues persist and they're deeper kind of body image issues like eating disorders, then that person should see a therapist for the deeper work.
Great. I'm sorry. Yeah. I got to continue on because this is kind of interesting to me. So do you think that as pastors, as leaders of churches, we should also have an eye for that too, for clothing changes? And do you think as a psychologist, you would advise us, hey, there's more than just the eyes or the slouching of the person or how they change their walk. We have to look for sometimes the change of clothing that the person is wearing, because maybe a woman who was battered might wear something different because she's more depressed, because when she goes home, she's got to deal with all the stuff. Should we be more cognizant even on clothing as leaders?
I mean, if you notice something, it may not just show up in the clothes, but if you happen to notice it, then that you might be able in a position to do something about it, to address it, maybe not so directly, but if there's a relationship there, you might want to ask if everything is okay, if there's anything that they need. You may not address the clothes directly, although you do see it. If you refer them to a counselor, then maybe you might want to say something like, this is what I noticed. You may not necessarily need to say it specifically to that person, but you can ask other questions like how they're doing and things like that. So it's something, if you have an eye for it, that's great. You may not, and that's not the worst thing. There might be other things that you notice.
Wow.
Yeah.
Doc, our sister Carol Jones Simmons is asking, Dr. Sarah, have you seen a lot more anxiety in individuals that would usually not get anxious? I guess it's a hard question to answer, right? Because you would know if they would normally get anxious, but I guess that's the question as it relates to the pandemic.
I think people are generally anxious about the pandemic, but I don't think that that's necessarily something to be pathologized. I think that's something to maybe be discussed. And if they need to see someone, a counselor, they can talk to someone. But I think that there is a space for sort of normal reactions. Like, for example, if somebody has a death, you wouldn't say they're upset about the death and they're in their room for a few days. You wouldn't say, oh, they're clinically depressed. They're just depressed because somebody died. So there's sort of what you call how do you say, like a scale, or like what's the word I'm looking for? But anyway, it's like on a scale. So like you have normative reactions and you might have something that's more severe. So when it gets to something that's more severe, that's when you want to address it
right.
accordingly.
Right. Oh my goodness, we got questions coming in, and we come. Go ahead, overseer.
This is from
these are good.
wasn't many years ago the church was social service people would go to them first. I guess what she's saying that when social service people come to the church
Right.
first.
Yeah.
Did they come to the church?
Yeah, I think the question is that many years ago social services would kind of come to the church. Before the church would go to them. I guess they're saying they'd come to the church to kind of deal with situations.
To assess situations that they got calls for?
I guess I'm not 100% sure.
I'm not sure. I don't.
Yeah.
Usually they go to people's houses. Usually they wouldn't go to church because it's kind of they don't. Sometimes they go to schools and it can be embarrassing, but sometimes they don't have a choice. But usually they try to go to the houses.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm Dr. Sarah. I'm really delighted that you agreed to be with us on tonight. I truly appreciate the wonderful information that you have shared. We wanna obviously want to talk a little bit about what's coming up next week, and also something about the our different wares that we have available.
Yeah, I do, but I still want us to talk about my background so you can prove to everybody that my background is really cool when people are telling everybody else. Okay, so but since our next week we have Jonathan Manning come on. He's an entrepreneur. He's going to talk about his business, what he does, how we can help you achieve what you want to do, and also how he became an entrepreneur. So we're excited to have Jonathan Manning on. I've known him a long time. I've known him when he was a young man over in New York, so we're excited to have him on. Also, please don't forget about Badmen4Christ merchandise.
Yes.
If I was young, I would call it merch. I'm too old, so I'm saying merchandise. So we have all this merchandise. We have cups, we have glasses, we have mugs, we have hats, we have shirts, we have pullovers, we have hoodies. You want to make sure if you can get something, just anything to help support what we do. What you need to do is you need to Zelle. There's the phone number, 908-821-6504. The prices are there. You can go to our website. You can see how much it is. You just Zelle your dollars over to that number, and we will get the merch out to you. How do we send it? We don't send it slowly. We send it overnighted to you. That's how we do it over here.
All right. Oh, yeah. Bad. Yeah.
We would love it. Now, Sarah, my sister.
Yeah,
I've been ragged on since now we've done the show for almost 1.5 years now.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been ragging about my background because it's plain. I got little crevices here. They're saying that I have issues because of my background. I said, no, I don't. I just like it simple. So please, is there something wrong with my background, or what does my background say about me? If you saw this background, what would you say about me?
Dr. Sarah, before you answer the question, I want you to take a look at what a background ought to look like. In fact, there is a cross. There is a cross.
It's not my fault. He's fighting demons all the time. But please, how explain to me. Let me know what's going on.
Well, I personally, I didn't see anything. I didn't even think of it. But I get more information from you telling me how you feel about it. So you say you don't see anything wrong with it. You like it. Now, what is that? Is that a drape or?
It's a drape.
Okay.
Drape.
I mean, it's pretty simple, and that's the minimalist look. So if that's what you want, I think it's fine. And Bishop over here with his cross.
And his book.
Is that a little? What is behind it? What's the white? Is that a curtain?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Oh yes.
So, okay,
oh yes.
So that's
I bring our audience into my office so that they can sit with me in this designed space.
Well, he has a little bit more detail going on. So that's just a little. That's a little bit what you would call more of a maximalist, and you're more of a minimalist.
Yes,
and I think both can be fine.
But Sarah, he's doing it because he wants people to think he's intelligent, so he has books. I
like the books.
I read a lot.
but Dr. Sarah, that's the problem. He doesn't have in the books, so we already know that he's.
I don't read. No.
Again, we really happy. We really appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
It's been a joy. I enjoyed it. Even though it was a beautiful show. Thank you so much for the time
Thank you guys.
Here and just be here with us. Overseer.
Dr. Sarah, great job. We applaud you. We thank you for the work that you do. We know you even do it in ministry, and we know it's not easy doing home and work and ministry. So we thank you. We applaud you for all that you do. Thank your husband. Thank your kids for giving us this time with you. Stick around for us for a couple minutes after the show airs off. But everybody, thank you for joining the Badmen.
Yes.
For the Badman Show. Come back next week, same time, same channel, 7:15 every Monday, as Jonathan Manning joins us, and we talk about getting your own business started. God bless you. See you next week.
See you next week.
Yeah, B to the A to the D to the M. So sing hallelujah, revive us again. B to the A to the D to the M. So sing hallelujah, revive us again.